The emergency council chamber of the Zephyrian High Command buzzed with nervous energy. Holographic displays flickered across the curved walls, showing star charts, fleet positions, and casualty reports that painted a grim picture across 3 galaxy clusters. General Vextar stood at the center of the chamber, his forearms trembling as he addressed the assembled war council. His usually pristine blue exoskeleton was cracked and scarred, evidence of his recent escape from what the humans called Sector 7. Honored counselors. Vextar's voice carried through the chamber's translation matrix, his words heavy with exhaustion and something else, fear. I stand before you today not as a conquering general, but as a survivor, and I bring you a warning that could save our entire civilization. Council leader Murdoch leaned forward in her crystalline throne, her 6 eyes focusing intently on the battle-worn general. You commanded 12 battle fleets, Vextar, the largest armada in Zephyrian history. You were to crush this upstart species called humans and claim the resources for our empire. What happened? Vextar's mandibles clicked nervously. What happened, honored leader, is that we made a terrible mistake. We thought we were hunting prey. We discovered we had awakened something far worse than predators. The chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. The humans, Vextar continued, his voice barely above a whisper, they don't just fight back. They hunt, and when they hunt, they never stop. A younger council member, Advisor Ketra, scoffed. Impossible. Our intelligence reports show they barely escaped their own solar system 50 cycles ago. They have no significant military technology, no proper fleet doctrine. No concept of surrender, Vextar interrupted. No understanding of the word defeat, and a level of persistence that defies all military logic. The general activated a holographic display showing the remains of what had once been the pride of the Zephyrian fleet. Twisted metal debris floated in space, some pieces still glowing from recent weapons fire. This was Battle Group Alpha, Vextar said, pointing to the largest debris field. 12 dreadnoughts, 48 cruisers, and 100 escort vessels. The humans attacked it with 3 ships. 3. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the council. The human vessels were smaller, older, clearly outgunned, Vextar continued. But they fought like something I've never seen. When their shields failed, they rammed our ships. When their weapons ran out of ammunition, they used their ships as bombs. And when we thought we had killed them all, the general paused, his entire body shuddering. They kept coming. More ships, always more ships, from directions we never expected, using tactics that made no sense, with a coordination that seemed impossible for such a young species. Council leader Murdoch's voice carried a note of skepticism. You're telling us that this primitive species defeated our finest fleet through what? Reckless aggression? No, Vextar replied, his voice growing stronger. Through something much worse. They defeated us through adaptation. Every time we thought we understood their tactics, they changed. Every time we believed we had them cornered, they found a new way to strike back. In every single engagement, no matter how small, no matter how far from their homeworlds, they remembered. The general brought up another display, this one, showing a tactical map spanning several star systems. After the first battle, I regrouped at Station Kethmer. Surely, I thought, they would lick their wounds and retreat to defend their colonies. Instead, they followed us, not just to the station, but to every single supply depot, every refueling post, every communication relay we had used in the previous month. Advisor Ketra stood up abruptly. That's impossible. Our supply lines were classified at the highest levels. Even most of our own forces didn't know. They tracked us, Vextar said simply. Somehow, they followed heat signatures, gravitational disturbances, quantum wake patterns we didn't even know our ships produced. And when they found our installations, the display changed again, showing the burned-out hulks of what had once been mighty Zephyrian military bases. They didn't just destroy them, they studied them first, took samples, captured personnel for interrogation, downloaded our databases. They were learning about us faster than we could learn about them. The chamber had grown deathly, quiet even. The soft ambient sound seemed muted. It gets worse, Vexstar continued. Word of our conflict spread to other human colonies, colonies we had never even heard of. On the far side of their territory, they began sending ships. Not just military vessels, but converted cargo haulers, mining ships. Even civilian transports loaded with soldiers and weapons. Council Leader Murdoch's voice carried a tremor. How many ships? We stopped counting at 3,000, Vexstar replied, and they kept coming. Ships from colonies so distant that the news of our attack shouldn't have reached them for months. It was as if their entire species had suddenly focused on one goal. Finding us, the general activated one final display, showing a section of space near the edge of Zephyrian territory. This is where I made my final stand, the Kepler Nebula, 12 light-years from any human settlement. I chose it specifically because the radiation would mask our signatures, making us impossible to track. We had for remaining dreadnoughts. In the last of our veteran crews, the display zoomed in, revealing the nebula's swirling clouds of gas and energy. The humans found us anyway, not through technology, but through pure, methodical searching. They had divided their fleet into thousands of small groups, each one systematically checking every possible hiding spot in a dozen star systems. When they located us, Vexstar paused, his breathing becoming labored. They didn't attack immediately. They surrounded the entire nebula, hundreds of ships, positioned at every possible exit point. Then they sent in a single vessel with a message. What message? Murdoch asked, though her voice suggested she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Surrender unconditionally, and we will allow your crews to live. Refuse, and we will hunt down every Zephyrian ship, base, and colony until your species is extinct. The silence that followed was profound. I chose to fight, Vexstar continued. It seemed impossible that they could make good on such a threat. We were hidden in the nebula's deepest regions, protected by radiation that would fry their sensors and cook their crews. But they came anyway. The general's voice grew distant, as if he were reliving a nightmare. They sent in ships they had converted into radiation-proof battering rams, vessels designed to survive in the nebula's core, crewed by volunteers who knew they probably wouldn't survive. These ships found us through sheer determination, broadcasting our position to their fleet even as the radiation killed their crews. The display showed the final battle brief, savage, and utterly one-sided. When it was over, I was the only Zephyrian left alive in the entire nebula. They could have killed me, but instead they delivered another message. Vexstar looked directly at Council Leader Murdoch. Tell your people, humanity does not forgive. Humanity does not forget, and humanity never, ever stops hunting. The general straightened, his scarred exoskeleton catching the light from the holographic displays. They released me with a single functioning ship and enough fuel to reach our nearest base. But before I left, they showed me something else. A new display activated, showing star charts with red markers scattered across vast distances. These are human expeditionary forces, ships that had already left their territory before our first attack, searching for new worlds to colonize. The humans informed me that every single one of these expeditions had been recalled and redirected to Zephyrian space. The red markers seemed to pulse ominously on the display. 300 exploration fleets, honored counselors, each one now converted to a hunting pack with one simple mission: find every Zephyrian presence in the galaxy and eliminate it. Council Leader Murdoch stood slowly, her movement stiff with shock. You're telling us that we are now being hunted by an entire species? No, Vexstar replied, his voice filled with a grim certainty. I'm telling you that we were being hunted the moment we fired our first shot. We just didn't realize it yet. The general gestured to the star chart surrounding them. The humans have a saying, you can run, but you cannot hide. I didn't understand it before. I thought it was primitive bravado. Now I know better. Vexstar moved to the chamber's central platform, his movements deliberate and careful. They are coming, honored counselors. Not today, not tomorrow, but they are coming. They will find every Zephyrian world, every base, every ship, and when they do, they will offer the same choice they offered me: surrender or face extinction. The chamber erupted in panicked voices. But Murdoch raised her hand for silence. "What do you recommend?" General Vextar's response was immediate and unequivocal. Immediate and unconditional surrender. Full reparations for the damage we caused, and a complete withdrawal from all contested territories. Advisor Ketcher jumped to her feet. Surrender? To a species that barely has interstellar travel? The Zephyrian Empire has conquered 17 star systems. We have weapons that can crack planets. We cannot simply. The humans cracked one of our planets, Vextar interrupted quietly. Colony world HFY. Population, 2 million. They turned the entire crust into molten glass. The chamber fell silent again. How? Murdoch whispered. They gathered every piece of debris from our destroyed ships, every scrap of metal and technology we had left behind, and dropped it onto the planet's surface at near light speed. They turned our own vessels into kinetic weapons. Vextar's voice carried a note of something approaching awe. But that's not what terrifies me most. What terrifies me is that they did it efficiently, cleanly, with no wasted motion or resources. They had done the calculations before. The first piece of debris hit the atmosphere. The general looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each council member. This is not a species that fights in anger, honored counselors. This is a species that fights with cold, methodical precision. They are not warriors. They are exterminators, council. Leader Murdoch sank back into her throne, the weight of the general's words settling over the chamber like a suffocating blanket. How long do we have? Vextar consulted a small device attached to his wrist. Based on their current expansion rate and the speed of their fastest ships, I estimate 6 months before the first human vessels reach our outer territories. 12 months before they arrive at our core worlds. The general paused, his mandibles clicking softly. Unless they've already arrived. As if summoned by his words, an alarm began blaring throughout the chamber. Emergency lights bathed the room in an ominous red glow. As a communications officer rushed into the chamber. Honored Council, the officer gasped, "We're receiving a transmission from the edge of our system. It's from a human vessel." The chamber's main display activated, showing the image of a human woman in a crisp military uniform. Her dark hair was pulled back severely, and her brown eyes held an unsettling calm. "Zephyrian High Command," the human said, her voice carrying clearly through the translation matrix. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Expeditionary Force. We are here to discuss terms." The human's smile was polite, professional, and absolutely terrifying. "You have 30 minutes to respond. I suggest you use them wisely." The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. General Vextar looked around at the frozen faces of his superiors and nodded grimly. "I told you they were coming." Chapter 2. The hunt begins 6 months earlier, deep in the Sol system. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the EFS Relentless, humanity's newest and most advanced warship. The bridge was a study in controlled chaos officers move with practiced efficiency between holographic displays, while the soft hum of the ship's quantum processors provided a constant background symphony. Admiral called Lieutenant Commander Martinez from the communications station. "We're receiving the final transmission from General Morrison's reconnaissance fleet." Chen turned from the viewport where she had been studying the distant stars. At 42, she had the weathered look of someone who had spent most of her adult life in space. But her eyes held a sharpness that spoke of an intellect constantly analyzing, calculating, preparing. "Put it on the main screen." The bridge's central display flickered to life, showing the tired face of General James Morrison. Behind him, Chen could see the bridge of his flagship, the EFS Determination. Even through the holographic projection, she could tell something was wrong. "Sarah," Morrison began, his voice heavy with exhaustion, "we've confirmed the worst. The Zephyrians weren't just probing our defenses at Kepler Station. They were testing us." Chen felt a cold knot form in her stomach. "How bad?" "Kepler Station is gone. All 3 million inhabitants. They glassed the entire colony from orbit, then moved on to the mining installations at Proxima 7. We found survivors there, but only a few hundred out of 50,000. The bridge had grown quiet, every officer listening to Morrison's report with growing anger. They're not interested in conquest, Sarah. They're clearing us out, systematically. Our intelligence suggests they've targeted every human settlement beyond the Sol system for what they call species cleansing. Chen's jaw tightened. She had suspected as much when the first reports came in, but hearing it confirmed was like taking a physical blow. What about their fleet composition? Morrison consulted something off-screen. Massive. We're talking about a force designed to exterminate entire civilizations, 12 battle groups, each centered around a dreadnought-class vessel. Conservative estimates put their total strength at over 300 ships. And our response? Morrison's expression grew grim. The Colonial Defense Force is mobilizing every available vessel. We're looking at maybe 60 ships total, most of them converted civilian craft. It's not enough. Sarah, not even close. Chen nodded slowly. She had been expecting this conversation for weeks, ever since the first distress calls had reached Earth. What about the other colonies? Are they coordinating a defense? That's the thing, Morrison replied. They're not defending. Every single human settlement that received word of the Kepler attack has done the same thing. They've evacuated their civilians and converted every available vessel for combat operations. The general's voice carried a note of something that might have been pride. The Centauri colonies alone have mobilized over 100 converted cargo haulers. New Geneva has turned their entire merchant fleet into a carrier group. In the asteroid mining consortiums, Morrison paused, shaking his head in amazement. They've weaponized their mass drivers, turned every mining ship into a kinetic bombardment platform. Chen felt the first stirrings of what would later become humanity's most effective military strategy. Jim, what's our total strength if we include all converted civilian vessels? Hang on. Let me check the latest reports. Morrison disappeared from view for a moment, then returned with an expression of disbelief. Sarah, we're looking at over 3,000 vessels. Everything from modified pleasure yachts to converted colony ships. It's the largest fleet in human history. Chen felt a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. Not a pleasant smile, but something colder and far more dangerous. Jim, I want you to pull back to the Sol system. Bring every survivor you can find. But don't engage the Zephyrians directly, Sarah. We can't just abandon. We're not abandoning anyone. Chen interrupted. We're hunting. The bridge crew turned to look at their admiral, and Chen could see the confusion in their faces. Lieutenant Rodriguez, she called to her tactical officer. Pull up the long-range sensor data from the Kepler attack. The main display shifted. To show the tactical breakdown of the Zephyrian assault, look at their formation. Chen continued. Textbook fleet engagement. They approached the station directly, eliminated orbital defenses, then systematically destroyed surface installations. Clean, efficient, by the book. She gestured to the sensor data flowing across the screen. But notice what they didn't do. They didn't scout their rear. They didn't establish a perimeter. They didn't even bother to encrypt their communications properly. Lieutenant Commander Martinez looked up from his station. Mom, are you suggesting they're overconfident? I'm suggesting, Chen replied, that they think they're fighting a conventional war against a conventional enemy. They've studied our Colonial Defense Force, they've analyzed our standard tactics, and they've prepared accordingly. Chen moved to the center of the bridge, her voice gaining strength. What they haven't prepared for is 3,000 ships operating, without central command, without standard doctrine, and without any regard for conventional military wisdom. She activated the ship's internal communications system. All hands, this is Admiral Chen. As of this moment, the EFS Relentless is no longer part of the Colonial Defense Force. We are now the flagship of the Human Expeditionary Force, and our mission is simple. Hunt down and eliminate every Zephyrian vessel in human space. Chen could hear the murmur of voices throughout the ship as her words spread. We will not be defending our colonies. We will not be protecting our shipping lanes. We will be taking the fight directly to the enemy, and we will not stop until every last one of them is dead or driven from our territory. The Admiral looked around the bridge, meeting the eyes of each of her officers. Anyone who has a problem with this mission can transfer to a defensive posting. No questions asked, no judgment rendered. But if you stay, understand that we are no longer sailors or soldiers. We are hunters. The bridge remained silent for a long moment. Then Lieutenant Rodriguez spoke up. Ma'am, request permission to modify our torpedo loadouts for extended operations. Granted. Chen replied, Admiral, Martinez called from communications. I'm receiving similar transmissions from ships throughout the fleet. It looks like every captain is making the same decision. Chen nodded grimly. Patch me through to all human vessels in this sector. The communications officer worked quickly, and within moments Chen's voice was being broadcast to hundreds of ships scattered across several star systems. This is Admiral Chen to all human vessels. As of this moment, we are no longer fighting a defensive war. Every ship, every crew, every human being in space has one mission: find the Zephyrians and kill them. She paused, letting her words sink. And I don't care if you're a cargo hauler or a dreadnought. I don't care if you're civilian or military. The Zephyrians have made it clear that they intend to exterminate our species. Our response will be simple. We will exterminate them first. Chen could see nods and grim smiles on faces throughout her own bridge. Divide into hunting packs, share intelligence freely, support each other without question. And remember, they may have bigger ships and better weapons, but they have never faced anything like us. The Admiral closed the channel and turned back to Morrison's image on the main screen. Jim, I want you to coordinate with Earth Command. Start recalling every exploration vessel beyond our borders. I don't care if they're mapping new systems or negotiating trade agreements. Bring them home and arm them. Morrison nodded slowly. What about the colonies that are still holding out? Tell them to evacuate if they can, fight if they can't, and run if they must. But every ship that escapes should join the hunt. Chen moved back to the viewport, gazing out at the stars that now held a far more sinister aspect. How long until we intercept the Zephyrian fleet? At current speed, 18 hours, replied her navigation officer. Good. That gives us time to coordinate with the other hunting packs. Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up from his tactical display. Admiral, I'm showing dozens of ship groups, moving to intercept the Zephyrians from multiple vectors. It looks like they're going to be completely surrounded. Chen's smile grew wider and colder. Perfect. Let's show them what happens when they threaten humanity. As the EFS Relentless and her escort vessels adjusted course toward their first engagement with the Zephyrian fleet, Admiral Chen reflected on the irony of the situation. The aliens had expected to find a young species with limited military capability, easy prey for their superior technology and tactics. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous, a species that refused to be hunted. 18 hours later, the Zephyrian battle group led by General Vexstar would encounter 3 converted cargo vessels in what their tactical computers classified as a minor skirmish. It would be the first engagement of what historians would later call the Terran Hunting War, and it would be the beginning of the end for the Zephyrian Empire. Chapter 3. The packed cargo vessel EFS Determination's wake had never been intended for combat. Built to haul mining equipment between asteroid belts, she was slow, ungainly, and about as threatening as a floating warehouse. But Captain Maria Santos had spent the last 3 weeks turning her ship into something else entirely. Status report. Santos called from her improvised command center, which had formerly been the ship's inventory management bay. Forward mass driver is loaded and ready, replied Chief Engineer Park, whose usual job involved maintaining or processing equipment, not weapons systems. We've got 6 tungsten penetrators in the queue, each one massing about 50 tons. Santos nodded grimly. The mass driver had been designed to launch processed or toward collection points, but it worked just as well for accelerating solid metal projectiles to significant fractions of light speed. What about our escorts? Lieutenant Hayes, formerly the ship's cargo supervisor and now serving as tactical coordinator, consulted his jury-rigged sensor display. The Madison's Grace is holding position 2,000 kilometers to starboard. Captain Joe reports his missile pods are armed and ready. The Frontier Explorer is maintaining stealth position directly below us. Santos felt a familiar knot of tension in her stomach. 3 converted civilian vessels against what their sensors showed as at least a dozen Zephyrian warships. By any conventional military analysis, they were about to be slaughtered. But Santos had stopped thinking conventionally about 3 weeks ago, when word of the Kepler Station massacre had reached her ship, Chief Park. How long until the Zephyrians reached weapons range? 14 minutes at their current approach speed, Park replied. They're still transmitting surrender demands. Are they now? Santos couldn't help but smile. What exactly are they demanding? The usual. Hayes answered, reading from his display. Immediate surrender. Preparation for boarding. All crew to report to designated areas for processing. Santos's smile vanished. She had seen the recordings from the few survivors of other Zephyrian attacks. She knew exactly what processing meant. Chief, slave our mass driver to the targeting computer. I want it aimed at the lead Zephyrian vessel. Mum, Park said carefully, our targeting system was designed for stationary asteroid mining. These ships are moving at high velocity and taking evasive action. Then we'll just have to get closer, Santos replied. She activated the ship's communication system, broadcasting on the frequency used by the small human fleet that had gathered for this engagement. All vessels, this is Santos. Remember, we're not here to win a conventional battle. We're here to hurt them badly enough that they think twice about attacking the next human settlement. The reply came from Captain Joe aboard the Madison's Grace. Understood, Maria. My missile pods are programmed for delayed detonation. Even if they intercept them, the warheads will still cause damage. Captain Williams of the Frontier Explorer's voice crackled. Over the comm, I'm reading massive electromagnetic signatures from their ships. Looks like they're charging weapons. Santos felt her jaw tighten. All ships. Execute attack pattern Santos. It wasn't really a pattern at all, just a plan they had hastily developed during their approach to the engagement zone. But it had one crucial advantage. No military academy in the galaxy would have taught it, because it was fundamentally insane. The 3 human vessels suddenly broke formation, each ship accelerating in a different direction at maximum burn. To the Zephyrian sensors, it must have looked like panicked 3 civilian vessels fleeing in terror from superior military forces, which was exactly what Santos wanted them to think. Chief Park, are you ready? Mass driver is charged and targeted. Captain, though I should mention that firing it will probably tear our ship apart. Probably. Santos agreed. But that's why we evacuated all non-essential personnel to the escape pods. The Determination's wake completed her turn and began accelerating directly toward the lead Zephyrian dreadnought. To any observer, it looked like a desperate ramming attempt. Captain, Hayes called urgently, the Zephyrians are altering course. To avoid us, they think we're trying to ram them. Perfect, Santos replied. Chief, fire when we reach optimal range. The mass driver had been designed to operate in the precise, controlled environment of asteroid mining. What Park had done was strip away every safety system, every limiting factor, every component designed to prevent catastrophic failure. The result was a weapon that could fire once, with devastating effect, before destroying itself and probably taking the ship with it. Range optimal, Park announced, firing. The tungsten penetrator left the Determination's wake at approximately 15% of light speed, crossing the distance to the Zephyrian dreadnought in just under 3 seconds. The alien vessel's shields, designed to absorb energy weapons and deflect conventional projectiles, had never been tested against a 50-ton chunk of metal moving at relativistic speeds. The penetrator punched through the dreadnought's shields like they weren't there, tore through the hull plating, and continued through 17 internal decks, before finally coming to rest in the ship's main reactor assembly. Direct hit, Hayes shouted. The Zephyrian vessel is showing massive internal damage. Their power grid is fluctuating. Santos grinned fiercely. Joe, Williams, you're up. The Madison's Grace emerged from behind a small asteroid, her improvised missile pods launching their entire payload at the damaged dreadnought. The missiles were simple chemical rockets fitted with nuclear warheads, slow and clumsy by military standards. But there were over 100 of them. The Zephyrian point defense systems designed to intercept sophisticated guided weapons, easily destroyed most of the incoming missiles. But Captain Joe had programmed the warheads for proximity detonation, and the overlapping explosions created a temporary zone of electromagnetic chaos. Round the alien vessel. Into this chaos came the Frontier Explorer, her cargo bays filled with what were technically mining charges, but which any reasonable person would call bombs. Captain Williams had rigged them for remote detonation and launched the entire inventory directly into the storm of explosions surrounding the dreadnought. The combined detonation was visible from 3-star systems away. "Holy," Park whispered, staring at the tactical display. "The dreadnought is gone, completely vaporized." Santos nodded grimly. "What about the rest of their fleet?" "They're retreating," Hayes reported, his voice filled with disbelief. "All remaining vessels are braking off and moving away at maximum speed." Santos felt a moment of savage satisfaction, but it was tempered by the knowledge that this was just the beginning. Damage report. "The mass driver is completely destroyed," Park reported. "Half our power grid is offline, life support is running on emergency reserves, and our hull has stress fractures throughout the forward section. Can we make it to the nearest human base? Maybe, if we don't push the engines too hard." Santos activated the fleet communication system again. "Joe, Williams." "Report." "Madison's Grace is in rough shape but operational," Joe replied. "We've lost our missile capability, but we can still navigate." Williams's voice was strained. "Frontier Explorer has suffered major hull damage. We're venting atmosphere, and our engines are running at about 30% capacity." Santos made a quick decision. "Joe, escort Williams back to safe harbor. I'll stay here and conduct a post-battle analysis." "Maria," Joe's voice carried a note of concern, "your ship is barely operational. You should come with us." "Negative. Someone needs to examine the wreckage, see what we can learn about their technology. Besides," Santos added with a grim smile, "I want to send a message to any other Zephyrian forces in the area." After her to escort vessels had departed, Santos ordered her remaining crew to begin a systematic examination of the debris field where the dreadnought had been destroyed. What they found was both fascinating and terrifying. "Captain," Chief Park called from his makeshift laboratory, "you need to see this." Santos made her way to the lab, which had been hastily set up in one of the ship's storage compartments. "What do you have?" Park gestured to a collection of metal fragments and crystalline components spread across the examination table. "These are pieces of the Zephyrian dreadnought's hull and internal systems. The technology is definitely more advanced than ours, but not by as much as we feared." Santos picked up one of the crystal fragments, noting its unusual weight and color. "What's this? Some kind of computer core. The interesting thing is, it's still partially functional. Our linguist has been working with the translation matrix, and we've managed to extract some data." Park activated a small display showing alien text that slowly resolved into English. "It appears to be a tactical analysis of our attack. The Zephyrians classified our assault as irrational but effective, and recommended immediate withdrawal from human space, pending development of new defensive strategies." Santos felt a cold smile cross her face. "They're learning to fear us. There's more." Park continued. "We also found navigation data, jump coordinates for their fleet bases, supply depots, even what appears to be their home system." Santos stared at the data scrolling across the display. This was more than just tactical intelligence. This was a roadmap to the enemy's entire infrastructure. "Chief, prepare a data packet with everything we've learned. I want to transmit it to every human vessel in the fleet." "Already done, Captain. We sent the first transmission an hour ago." Santos nodded approvingly. "Good. Now prepare another transmission, but this one goes out on Zephyrian military frequencies." Park looked confused. "What kind of message?" Santos's smile grew wider and far more dangerous. "A simple one. Tell them that the human ship Determination's wake was here. Tell them that we destroyed their dreadnought with converted mining equipment. And tell them that we found their navigation data." She paused, considering her words carefully. "Most importantly, tell them that 3,000 human vessels now have the coordinates to every Zephyrian installation in this sector of the galaxy." Park's eyes widened. Captain, won't that just make them more desperate? More likely to attack human settlements, Chief, Santos replied. They were already planning to exterminate our entire species. Now they know that we're coming for them. She moved to the lab's small viewport, gazing out at the debris field that had once been a mighty Zephyrian warship. Let them run. Let them hide. Let them prepare whatever defenses they think will save them. It won't matter. Santos turned back to her engineer, and Park was struck by the absolute certainty in her voice. Because now they know what every human in the galaxy knows. We are very, very good at hunting. As the Determination's wake limped away from the battle, Captain Santos's message was already propagating through both human and Zephyrian communication networks. The human vessels received it as intelligence data to be analyzed and exploited. The Zephyrian forces received it as something else entirely, a promise of retribution that would follow them across the galaxy. It was the first message in what would become humanity's most effective psychological warfare campaign, and it was just the beginning. #. Chapter 4 The Reckoning. 3 months after the destruction of the Zephyrian dreadnought, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of Orbital Station Liberty, studying a three-dimensional holographic map that showed the current positions of human and Zephyrian forces across a region spanning dozens of star systems. The map was a study in contrasts. Red markers indicated confirmed Zephyrian positions, military bases, supply depots, fleet formations. These markers formed a rough sphere round what intelligence suggested was their core territory, but they were scattered and seemed to be constantly moving. Blue markers showed human forces, and they were everywhere. Hundreds of small fleet groups, individual ships, and improvised bases formed a vast net that was slowly contracting around Zephyrian space. Admiral, call Commander Torres from the intelligence station. We're receiving the latest reports from the hunting packs. Chen nodded without taking her eyes off the display. What's the status? Pack leader Rodriguez reports successful engagement with a Zephyrian supply convoy in the Vega sector. 3 enemy vessels destroyed, 1 captured intact. They recovered navigation data and what appears to be a partial fleet roster. Chen felt a familiar satisfaction. Every engagement brought more intelligence, and every piece of intelligence made the next engagement more effective. Pack leader Kim destroyed a Zephyrian communication relay near Proxima. They used a converted ice hauler to ram the station at high speed. The explosion was visible for several light minutes. Casualties? Kim's crew evacuated to escape pods before impact. All hands recovered safely. Chen nodded approvingly. The human fleet had quickly learned that their greatest advantage lay not in superior technology, but in superior adaptability and an absolute willingness to sacrifice equipment for strategic advantage. Pack leader Okafor engaged a Zephyrian patrol group near the Kepler debris field, used converted medical ships equipped with surgical lasers to disable enemy vessels without destroying them, recovered 47 Zephyrian prisoners in a complete tactical database. Chen's eyebrows rose slightly. 47 prisoners? That's more than we've taken in all previous engagements combined. Yes, ma'am. Okafor reports that the Zephyrians seemed confused by the medical ships. They didn't fire until the surgical lasers began cutting through their hull plating. Chen couldn't help but smile. They're starting to hesitate. Good. She moved to another section of the holographic display, where red markers had been steadily disappearing over the past several weeks. What about the supply situation in Zephyrian space? Commander Torres consulted his datapad. Intelligence suggests it's becoming critical. Our attacks on their logistics network have forced them to consolidate their remaining supplies at heavily defended bases. But that just makes them easier targets for our larger pack formations. Chen nodded. Show me the Kepler Memorial operation. The display shifted to focus on a single star system where nearly 200 human vessels had gathered. At the center of the formation was something that made even experienced military officers pause. The converted colony ship F's New Horizon, now serving as a massive carrier platform. Captain Ray's reports ready for launch. Torres continued. The Memorial fleet is carrying enough firepower to level a small planet and they're all volunteers from the families of Kepler Station victims. Chen studied the formation carefully. The New Horizon had been converted into something between an aircraft carrier and a mobile weapons platform. Her civilian-grade hull was covered with improvised weapon mounts, missile pods, and what appeared to be several masked drivers salvaged from destroyed Zephyrian vessels. Their target? Zephyrian Fleet Base Delta 7. Intelligence confirms it's their primary staging area for operations against human colonies. Estimated garrison of 40+ vessels. Chen was quiet for a long moment, considering the implications. The Memorial Fleet represented something new in human military doctrine, not just a hunting pack, but a full-scale assault force designed to eliminate major enemy installations. Admiral Torres said quietly, "There's something else. We've been monitoring Zephyrian communications, and they're starting to talk about us differently." How so? Torres activated an audio file, and the chamber filled with the translated voices of Zephyrian military personnel. Recommend immediate withdrawal from Sector 12. Human vessels have been sighted in the area, and our patrol ships are refusing to. Impossible to maintain supply lines when every convoy is being hunted by. Requesting emergency reinforcements for Station Kethmer. We're surrounded by at least 50 human vessels, and they're not attacking. They're just waiting. Chen held up a hand, and Torres stopped the playback. They're just waiting. Yes, ma'am. It's become a common tactic. Human forces surround a Zephyrian installation but don't attack immediately. Sometimes they wait for days or weeks, just watching. Chen felt a cold satisfaction. Psychological warfare. They never know when the attack is coming, so they're constantly at maximum alert. That's exhausting for any military force. Admiral called Lieutenant Park from the communications station. We're receiving a priority transmission from the Memorial Fleet. Captain Race is requesting permission to begin final approach to their target. Chen moved to the central command platform. Put him through. The main display showed the weathered face of Captain Miguel Reyes, a former colony administrator who had lost his wife and 3 children in the Kepler Station attack. Behind him, Chen could see the bridge of the New Horizon, bustling with activity as the massive vessel prepared for combat. Admiral Chen, Reyes said, his voice carrying the controlled emotion of a man who had found purpose and vengeance. The Memorial Fleet is in position and ready to commence operations. Status report, Captain. 197 vessels, ranging from converted luxury yachts to modified cargo haulers. We've identified our target and confirmed the presence of at least 43 Zephyrian warships. Chen could see the determination in Reyes' eyes, but also something else, a cold, methodical planning that reminded her of her own transformation over the past months. Captain, you understand that this will be the largest engagement in the conflict so far. Are your people ready for this? Reyes' smile was not pleasant. Admiral, my people have been ready since Kepler Station was destroyed. We've spent 3 months turning civilian vessels into weapons of war. We've practiced coordination between ships that were never designed to work together. And we've done it all for one reason. He paused, his voice growing quieter but more intense. To make sure that what happened at Kepler never happens to another human colony. Chen nodded slowly. You have authorization to proceed, Captain. Make them remember why they should never have threatened humanity. Understood, Admiral. Memorial Fleet out. The transmission ended, and Chen found herself alone with her thoughts for a moment. The irony was not lost on her. A species that had achieved interstellar flight through cooperation and peaceful exploration was now conducting the most efficient military campaign in galactic history. Admiral Torres called urgently. We're receiving reports from across the sector. It looks like the Zephyrians are beginning a general withdrawal from all contested systems. Chen turned back to the holographic display, which was updating in real time as new intelligence flowed in. Red markers were indeed moving, but not in random directions. They seemed to be consolidating toward a single region of space. They're retreating to their core territory, Chen observed, probably hoping to make a final stand where they have the advantage of prepared defenses. Should we pursue immediately? Chen considered the question carefully. No, let them retreat. Let them consolidate. Let them think they're safe behind their defenses. She gestured to the countless blue markers spread across the display. Meanwhile, we continued the hunt. Every Zephyrian supply ship, every communication relay, every automated system they've left behind. We destroy it all. Torres looked puzzled. Ma'am, if they're retreating to their home systems, why not concentrate our forces for a direct assault? Chen's smile was cold and calculating. Because, Commander, we're not just fighting a war. We're sending a message to every species in the galaxy. The message is simple. Humanity does not forgive. Humanity does not forget. And humanity never stops hunting. She moved to the strategic planning station and began entering commands. Send orders to all pack leaders. Phase 1 of the operation is complete. Begin Phase 2. Total elimination of all Zephyrian presence in human space and surrounding sectors. What about Phase 3? Chen's voice carried an edge that made every officer in the command center pause. Phase 3 is when we follow them home. As if summoned by her words, an alert tone sounded throughout the station. Lieutenant Park looked up from his communications panel with an expression of shock. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from Zephyrian High Command. It's a surrender offer. The command center fell silent. In the 3 months since the conflict began, the Zephyrians had never offered anything except demands for human surrender. Put it through. The main display activated, showing the familiar form of Council Leader Murdoch, though she looked considerably more haggard than in previous transmissions. Admiral Chen, Murdoch began, her voice carrying a weariness that spoke of desperation. I am authorized by the Zephyrian High Command to offer terms for a cessation of hostilities. Chen felt every eye in the command center turn toward her, but she kept her expression neutral. I'm listening. We propose an immediate ceasefire and the establishment of neutral zones between our territories. In exchange, we offer full reparations for the damage caused to human colonies and the release of all prisoners. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Considering the offer, it was, by any objective measure, a complete capitulation by the Zephyrians. They were offering everything humanity could reasonably demand. But Chen was no longer thinking reasonably. Council Leader Murdoch, she said finally, your offer is noted and rejected. The Zephyrian leader's expression showed shock. Admiral, surely you must see that continued conflict serves no purpose. We are offering full reparations, and you misunderstand, Chen interrupted. This was never about reparations. This was never about territory or resources or any of the usual causes of war. Chen moved closer to the display, her voice growing colder. You attacked our colonies. You murdered our civilians. You attempted to exterminate our species. And now you think you can negotiate your way out of the consequences. The Admiral paused, letting her words sink in. There will be no ceasefire. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. You wanted to hunt humanity to extinction. Now you get to learn what it feels like to be hunted. Murdoch's voice carried a note of desperation. Admiral, please. We acknowledge our mistakes. We are willing to make any reasonable. You had your chance for reason, Chen replied. You chose extermination instead. Now you get to experience what you tried to inflict on us. Chen gestured, and Lieutenant Park cut the transmission. The command center remained silent for several seconds before Commander Torres spoke up. Admiral, was that wise? They were offering complete surrender? Chen turned to face her staff, and every officer present was struck by the absolute certainty in her voice. Commander, we are no longer fighting to defend our colonies or protect our territory. We are fighting to ensure that no species in this galaxy ever again makes the mistake of threatening humanity. She moved back to the holographic display, where blue markers continued to spread across the star chart like an infection. When this is over, every civilization in the galaxy will know exactly what happens when you attack humans. And they will never, ever make that mistake again. As if to punctuate her words, the display updated with a flash of light in the Zephyrian core territory. Captain Reyes and the Memorial Fleet had reached their target. The final phase of the war was about to begin. Epilogue. The legend 5 years after the first Zephyrian attack on Kepler Station. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood before the Galactic Council Assembly, representing not just humanity, but something else entirely, the acknowledged apex predator species of known space. The assembly chamber was a masterpiece of interstellar architecture designed to accommodate representatives from dozens of different species. But today, all attention was focused on the human delegation and the testimony they were about to provide. Or representatives, Vasquez began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's universal translation system. I stand before you today to present humanity's final report on what historians have designated the Terran-Zephyrian conflict. The chamber was unusually quiet. Every species represented had heard fragments of the story, but few had access to complete information about what humanity had accomplished in the years since the war began. The conflict began when the Zephyrian Empire, believing humanity to be a primitive and defenseless species, initiated what they termed a cleansing operation against human colonies. Their goal was the complete extermination of our species and the seizure of our territory. Vasquez activated a holographic display showing the initial Zephyrian assault on human space. The Zephyrian Empire commanded one of the most powerful military forces in known galactic history, 12 battle fleets, over 300 vessels, weapons capable of destroying entire planets. By any conventional analysis, humanity should have been extinct within months. She paused, allowing the magnitude of the initial threat to sink in. Instead, what occurred was the most comprehensive military defeat in recorded galactic history. The Zephyrian Empire no longer exists. Their fleets have been destroyed. Their colonies have been evacuated. Their home system is now under human administration. The chamber erupted in startled murmurs. Many representatives had suspected the outcome, but hearing it confirmed so bluntly was still shocking. But this presentation is not about military tactics or strategic doctrine, Vasquez continued. It is about what humanity learned during this conflict, and what that means for galactic civilization. Going forward, the display shifted to show a tactical map covering several galaxy clusters. When the Zephyrians attacked our colonies, they expected us to respond as any rational species would: consolidate our defenses, protect our core territory, negotiate from a position of weakness. Instead, we did something unprecedented. Vasquez gestured to the display, which now showed the spreading pattern of human forces during the conflict. We turned our entire civilization into a hunting pack. Every ship, every crew, every human being in space focused on one objective: the complete elimination of Zephyrian military capability. The display zoomed into show specific engagements, highlighting the unconventional tactics humanity had employed. We converted civilian vessels into weapons of war. We used mining equipment as kinetic weapons. We turned medical ships into assault platforms. We abandoned every conventional military doctrine and instead relied on adaptability, persistence, and an absolute refusal to accept defeat. Ambassador Kethra of the Regelian Commonwealth stood to speak. Ambassador Vasquez, while these tactics may have been effective, surely you cannot suggest that such aggressive responses are appropriate for civilized species. Vasquez turned to address the Regelian representative directly. Ambassador Kethra, you raise an important point. Humanity did not choose this conflict. We did not seek war with the Zephyrian Empire. But when faced with extermination, we discovered something fundamental about our species. She paused, her voice taking on a harder edge. We are very, very good at hunting, and once we begin hunting, we do not stop until the threat is completely eliminated. The chamber fell silent again as the implications of her words settled over the assembled representatives. The Zephyrian Empire attempted to negotiate surrender multiple times during the conflict. Each offer was rejected, not because we sought conquest or territory, but because we had learned that the only way to ensure the safety of humanity was the complete removal of any species willing to attempt our extermination. Council Speaker Merlix of the Centaurian Alliance raised a tentacle. Ambassador, are you suggesting that humanity represents a threat to peaceful species? Vasquez smiled, but it was not a comforting expression. Speaker Merlix, humanity has No interest in conquest or domination. We seek only peaceful coexistence and mutual prosperity with all species. But if any civilization chooses to threaten human colonies or attempt to harm human civilians, she gestured to the display, which now showed the empty space where the Zephyrian Empire had once existed. The fate of the Zephyrians will be their fate as well. The display shifted to show current human territory, which had expanded significantly since the beginning of the conflict. Humanity now administers 17 star systems that were formerly part of the Zephyrian Empire. These systems are being converted into memorial worlds, living monuments. To the consequences of threatening humanity, Ambassador Vasquez moved to the center of the chamber, addressing the assembled representatives directly. Honored Council, I want to be absolutely clear about humanity's position. We seek peaceful relations with all species. We offer trade, cooperation, and mutual defense agreements to any civilization willing to coexist respectfully. Her voice grew colder, but we also offer this warning, to be transmitted to every species in the galaxy. We are humanity. We do not forgive. We do not forget. We do not stop hunting. And we will cross galaxies to eliminate any threat to our people. The chamber remained silent for several minutes, as the representatives absorbed the full meaning of her words. Finally, Council. Speaker Merlix spoke again. Ambassador Vasquez, humanity's message has been received and understood. Is there anything else the Council should know? Vasquez consulted a small device and smiled. Actually, yes, I have just received word that the human exploration vessel F's Discovery has made contact with a previously unknown species in the Andromeda Galaxy. Initial reports suggest they are peaceful and interested in establishing diplomatic relations. She paused, letting the significance of her words sink in. It appears that humanity's reach now extends beyond our home galaxy, as Ambassador Vasquez gathered her materials and prepared to leave the chamber. She reflected on how much had changed since the first Zephyrian attack. Humanity had entered the galactic community as a young, relatively weak species seeking its place among the stars. They were leaving as the acknowledged apex predator of known space, with a reputation that would spread to galaxies beyond their own. The warning had been delivered, the example had been set, and across the cosmos, species that had never heard of humanity would soon learn the most important lesson in galactic diplomacy: never, ever threaten the humans. They'll hunt you across galaxies. In the depths of space, thousands of human vessels continued their patrols, carrying a simple message to any species they encountered. Humanity was peaceful, but humanity was also persistent, and if threatened, humanity would never stop hunting. The legend of the Terran hunting war had begun to spread throughout the galaxy, and with each telling, the message became clear: humanity remembers, humanity endures, and humanity never stops hunting.